Alright. Now I'm back, and Happy New Year's. Well, let me just get that out of the way. Happy New Year's Day. It's after midnight from where I live, and yeah, want to get that out there. But I do apologize for not streaming yesterday like I said I would. It's still technically the same night as the 31st of December, but I mean, unfortunately, certain events made it impossible to stream without having to deal with a lot of noise coming from outside. So that's a bit unfortunate, but I got some good news though that I just learned recently. So apparently I was wrong about Ubisoft in that they still do have an interest in the Splinter Cell franchise. And what I mean by that is, apparently they just announced that Ubisoft Toronto is developing a remake of the original game. I mean, as much as I would like to be excited for such a thing, I'm not really all that confident in already anyways with the project, just because right now Ubisoft Toronto is asking for essentially more workers to develop the project, so they don't even have a actual complete team of developers. And when they were asked about any older developers from the original games returning to help with the remake, they essentially did not answer the question. They said yes, but they didn't give any names, and that bothers me. And the whole article on their website, I'll make a video about it and show it off, but essentially they're not giving the only two bits of information out of that whole interview that's actually worth knowing about is one, they promise anyways that they're going to keep the remake linear like the original games, so no open world, right? And it's not going to be Deus Ex, the original Deus Ex levels of huge open maps. It's just going to be linear game design like the original. So if they keep their promise, we're already off to a good start. However, they're going to be making a remake from the ground up. They're going to be using a completely new engine. They're not even going to be using Unreal Engine to develop this remake. They're using their own game engine. I don't know a whole lot about it just because they're not willing to talk or say much about it themselves. But nevertheless, though, it's supposed to essentially allow them to do a lot of the heavy lifting for them. But that's all the information they gave. Let me just select this. What else did they say that is worth talking about? That was the first thing that caught my attention and is worth knowing from that interview. The second bit of information that they said was that, please don't tell me I forgot. apparently I did forget. Oh, the other thing was that they were focusing on making the game specifically towards console players and the next generation of consoles. Not to say that they don't care about PC gamers, but like the original trilogy, this remake is going to be heavily catered towards Xbox players. And as a result, we're probably not going to hear anything about modding and other stuff related to that for a good long while. Especially if it's an engine that's not Unreal or Unity, something that's accessible to the public. If they're going to be using their own game engine, that's going to make it a lot harder to mod the game. But we'll see. What else? No, that's about it, really. There's just 2 bits of information. Is that... well, 3, if you count the fact that the original team may not be working on this remake. I've got a whole heap of questions I would ask them. And to be fair, whoever was doing the interview, I forgot who they are, but whoever was doing the interview or the article that's posted on Ubisoft's website, there were reasonable questions that most people, especially fans, would like to know the answers to, but for some reason, Ubisoft was just so vague in their answers to those questions that I seriously doubt that they were even going to bother explaining any of that in the first place. It sounds like due to legal reasons, they can't say a whole lot. And I'm sure that they would like to, they just can't. Because then it will get too much information away about how their new game engine works and whatnot. But yeah, Ubisoft Toronto is the same team that worked on Splinter Cell Blacklist. And I'll talk about Blacklist some other time, because I don't want to spend this whole stream talking about it. But Blacklist in of itself is not a terrible game. It's not a bad game at all, in fact. But as far as not even a Splinter Cell game, as far as judging it as a stealth action game, it's not a stealth action game at all. It just isn't. It has stealth action elements, and it gives the player the option to sneak your way through the missions, but it's honestly not really enforced like the original trilogy. I wouldn't say encouraged, because encouraged means that it's also optional to do something, and you're rewarded for doing that optional thing. No, in the original trilogy, if you didn't sneak around and do essentially what the developers wanted the player to do, you pretty much got punished for it, either by dying or failing the mission objective. And with Blacklist, you don't really get punished for anything, from what I remember. There may have been a few mission objectives here and there that if you didn't complete them correctly, you'd have to restart at a checkpoint, but otherwise, you weren't necessarily having to constantly worry about redoing a particular segment of the game, unless you just couldn't blast your way through it. But I digress. Anyways, let's go back to the remake. my thoughts about it. Again, you would expect me to be excited about it, especially with how depressing how depressed I sounded at the end of the Chaos Theory stream with regards to Ubisoft's interest in the franchise in general. But from what it sounds like, they don't even have a whole lot of resources put into this remake as it is. Oh, sorry, I forgot to change the playlist. That's already a red flag when it comes to these kinds of remakes, is do they even know what they're even going to do in the first place? They have the original game on Steam or GOG right now as the foundation, right? They don't have to make any new level designs at all if they don't want to. And they probably shouldn't, to be honest. But, yeah, they have the foundation already set there. They just need to modernize it, so to speak. But, is this really what the franchise needs? That's my first question in my mind right now. Do we need a remake of the original game, especially when you can play the original, the port of the original game on PC right now? And I think the answer to that is it's a complicated answer, but I think the answer is we don't necessarily need it, but it's nice to have. And let me expand that further. So, if you check their video out on that article they posted on their website, Ubisoft essentially goes on and on about how the original game was revolutionary in terms of the not just the graphics, but also the the shadow rendering, right? Which is something I mentioned in the first playthrough, the first stream I did of the original game back in 2019, 2020. And it's those technological, I wouldn't say advancements, but those technological feats that they did with the original game, they essentially want to prove that they can do it again. But the problem is that they don't have, Ubisoft Toronto does not have, as far as I know, the original developers of the original trilogy of the original game. So they already don't have a whole lot of guidance on what to do and what not to do. So that's not reassuring. Let me make a separate group layer here. Whew, it's hot. I had to turn the fan off because apparently that's been making a lot of noise and my mic has been picking up. So unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to cook until the stream ends. Let's see. Let's do torso. For that, we'll do insert. Actually, I should have did this. Then move this down below the maw. Yeah. Right above the dreadlocks. There we go. I'll do chest. And we'll do crescent. There we go. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the questions I have for this remake. Does it really need to exist? Or do we really just need another new title, sequel? Or, you know, another new title in the franchise? Do we need to move on from Sam Fisher and the other older characters? Honestly, I think only if Michael Ironside is not going to be around to help develop the franchise anymore. So if you don't know, Michael Ironside could not help develop Blacklist because he had issues with cancer at the time. He seems to be doing fine right now, but nevertheless though, he could not help do any of the work during it. Oh, I forgot to change that. There we go. He could not do the voiceover for Sam and Blacklist as a result, and that's why they had to get some other dude to do it for him. But this goes back to what I was saying, is that because it's really necessary to exist. Now granted, with the remake, they can just reuse the old audio from the original game instead of having to redo all the lines and such with new voice actors and actresses, but I don't know. I mean, if they pull another stunt like they did in Blacklist, where they didn't even get the voiceover for Sam to sound nowhere near his age, anyways, then they should just honestly replace Sam with some other character that's younger and different. Because we know Sam to sound, or rather, we know Sam to be Michael Ironside, essentially. So it would just be weird to hear someone else try to sound like Michael Ironside. I think the better thing to do would be to just get another character entirely, so you don't have to worry about that kind of pressure, that kind of expectation to meet. But anyways, so if they just reuse the old audio, then we don't have to worry about that being an issue. Okay, graphics and such. I mean, the only way they can mess this up graphically is if they pull their little stunts that they do with the Assassin's Creed franchise. And what I mean by that is, if they release a game in an unfinished state where textures don't load in properly, objects don't render at correct distances, and so on and so forth, then I mean, I don't know any other way to say it, but honestly, I couldn't care less about how the graphics are gonna look in the remake. I mean, I'm a guy that still plays games that were released back in the late 90s and early 2000s as far as 3D graphics go. Like, where 3D characters look polygonal, have like trapezoids and pyramids for eyes and noses and hands and so on, look really geometric instead of spherical and, you know, like actual people. So that doesn't bother me, and I grew up on that, so I especially don't get bothered by that. A lot of developers worked around that kind of issue, but I think this is too dark. Let me redo this color. I think this is too dark. Let's do that one. Then I'll do this one. For this little shadow here. Alright, what are some other questions I had when I was reading that article? Cut content. That was another question I had. Are we going to see any cut content being added? Are we going to see any new content being added? The original Splinter Cell game is the only game in the original trilogy that had any DLC missions in the first place. So are we going to get more DLC missions besides those? Are we going to get them those DLC missions from the original game at all? Cell, the submarine mission, and the other one I can't remember the name of right now, but the one where you kill Philip Mass. Are we going to get those missions again? And are those going to be remade? We'll see. If we're ever getting cut content, is that going to be treated as DLC missions? What else? Multiplayer. Are they going to add multiplayer? Because the original game did not have that. Pandora Tomorrow did, but not the original game. Are they going to make it completely single player like the original game? Again, these are all questions that I have thinking in my mind, because more than anything else, I'm thinking about all the ways that they could mess this up. And not to diss Ubisoft Toronto or anything. Like I said, they did alright with Blacklist, but if you read the article, when they said that their first Splinter Cell game was Blacklist as far as development goes, and they had no other experience with the franchise at all, you can already tell that I'm not very confident in their abilities to replicate the formula of the original trilogy, or of the original game, for that matter. So how many of them really actually played the original game and know what they're talking about as far as the formula goes? Okay. And let me just go ahead and blend this in. What else? What other questions I had in my mind? Oh, another big question I had in my mind was, are they going to remake the other Splinter Cell titles? Are they going to remake Pandora Tomorrow? Are they going to remake Chaos Theory? And this is what I was thinking when I thought about that. Or this is what I was thinking. If they try to remake Chaos Theory, they're essentially trying to improve a masterpiece, as I called it in the Chaos Theory stream. How do you improve something? How do you improve upon something that's nearly perfect, right? That's going to be really hard to do. Not to say that Chaos Theory is perfect, it's not, as I've already explained in my stream of it, but it's pretty close, and it's considered not just a really good Splinter Cell game, but it's also considered one of the best games ever made. Think about that, right? Regardless of your subjective opinion about Splinter Cell as a franchise, to know that the third game in the series is by far one of the best in gaming history, that's gonna caused me to have some really high expectations for a remake of it. And to think too that Chaos Theory was released 3 years after the original was developed and released. The original was released in 2002, whereas Chaos Theory was released in 2005. So Ubisoft Montreal, who developed the original game and also Chaos Theory, they essentially improved the formula and nearly perfected it in 3 years. That's not a whole lot of time to do something like that, right? Where they're essentially have never made a stealth action game before, yet somehow nearly perfected it. So, again, it's a lot of expectations, high expectations. And unlike, say, Half-Life 3 or something like that, where, you know, you gotta worry about third game in the series or third movie or whatever being better than the first two, this is a remake of the third installment. So, there's that. I mean, even with remaking Pandora Tomorrow, like, Pandora Tomorrow is a pretty good game as well. But you'd have to make it in a way where it would have to be memorable. That's one of the biggest flaws I think that Pandora Tomorrow has. It's just that, and it's not no fault of Ubisoft Shanghai's, right? It's not their fault at all for this problem that Pandora Tomorrow has, but it still exists. The fact that Pandora Tomorrow is just not a very memorable game in the series. I often forget that it even exists. And the only reason I remember it in the first place when talking about the original trilogy is because I keep remembering that Chaos Theory is the third game in the series. Right? So it's like, okay, what comes before Chaos Theory? Pandora Tomorrow. Oh, okay. That's the only reason why I remember Pandora Tomorrow in the first place. It's not, again, a bad game at all. It's not as iconic as the first one. And it's not as innovative and revolutionary as the third one. So if they can do something to make me remember, me, a long time Splinter Cell fan, remember that Pandora Tomorrow exists and it's worth playing, I mean, they would already pretty much perfect that title as well. But yeah, are they gonna remake the other titles in the franchise? We'll see. It's already ambitious enough as it is that they're trying to remake the original. Especially when it's not the original developers that are remaking it. A lot of pressure, but you know, I support them all the same. We'll see. Doing a better job of getting this work done, mostly because there's not much left to do. There is some slight cast shadow or reflective light on this hip here, but it's so minimal that I'm just not going to bother putting it in. It's a cool effect, but... And if I have time later, when I go back to clean this up, I'll put that in there, but more or less I don't really think that's necessary. Any other questions I had when I was reading the article? Oh, it's gotta be higher. Not really. Nothing else I can think of right now, anyways. I probably should separate this leg and the chest, but that's alright. They're technically connected to each other. This leg is not, however, because it's separated by this dreadlock. Again, there's a bit of reflective light here, but it's so minimal that I'm just gonna ignore it. Well, maybe not. Might add it. There we go. Something like that. Yeah, I don't have any other questions at the moment, other than just more obvious ones. That the interviewer in that article already asked. But, I mean, yeah, we'll see. I just did not like the fact that the members of Ubisoft Toronto and Ubisoft in general that were answering questions in that video, as well as in that interview, they didn't give any specific details at all, and essentially didn't say anything worth remembering. Again, it just seems like they themselves don't know anything about the remake. And since they just announced it earlier this month, or sometime this month, I can't blame them. But that's essentially the gist of that article. It's just them making the announcement that they're gonna make a remake. That's it, of the original game. That's what it just comes down to. Yeah, I'm gonna separate these dreadlocks. So dreadlocks. Put this in there. I'll put it left. Dreadlock. Or I should say right dreadlock. Oh, that was one more thing, one more question I had in my mind. Because I was thinking about conviction and every game past conviction. The movement. Are they going to make Sam's movement back to the way it was in the original trilogy? Are they going to make him slow again, is what I'm getting at. Because they talked about that a lot. They described the game, one of the adjectives they used to describe the original game was slow paced, slow, methodical gameplay. And I'm going to hold them to this, as well as the linear game design. Are they going to make Sam's movement slow again, so that you're not, one, it just doesn't make any sense in the context of the lore. Like Sam, by the time he's in Chaos Theory anyways, he's in his 50s or so, somewhere around his 40s and 50s. Like, a dude that old should not be able to move the way Sam does in Chaos Theory, but, you know, I can believe it because he's still moving pretty slow. Doing pull-ups, dips, climbing over object, and so on. And Conviction and onwards, he's still much older than that. Because, you know, a few years have passed since Chaos Theory. Yet, by Conviction and onwards, he's moving around as if he's 20 years younger. It just made no sense at all back then, and it still doesn't today. How do you explain that? Well, you don't. I mean, you could say that Sam was taking steroids or something, but I mean, Sam's really not the kind of guy to be enhanced anyways. He's not a big buff dude, and he's never had to move slow in the first place. Any of the original games. So hopefully they'll make him slow again, but they'll... Oh, whoops, sorry. I did not go back to this. Yeah. Hopefully they'll bring back the emphasis on platforming. The platforming and the first two games especially was pretty simple, right? There was not really anything like a 3D platformer, say like Crash Bandicoot or Super Mario 64 or anything like that, or Psychonauts for that matter. No precise jumping or anything like that, but for a game where you have to sneak around and such, it made a lot of sense that, you know, you weren't going to be jumping around like that anyways. Come on. No. Okay. Come on. Okay. I just wanted to smooth this out a bit. I smoothed that a little too much and made it muddy. There we go. It's okay if these lines or these edges are a bit sharp, but not that much. Anyways, but yeah, bring back the bring back the big maps that emphasize platforming and getting around, and use that as a way as a means of sneaking around enemies, especially with Pandora Tomorrow introducing that concept to the series. That helps out a lot with making or helping the player appreciate the platforming and the franchise and the game itself and the gameplay, rather than just see it as a just something that the developers just require the player to do. But yeah, just make Sam move slowly again. That's pretty much something I'm hoping that they'll do as well. Everything else, I mean, I don't see them messing up at all, like bringing back the light and darkness thing, or light and darkness mechanic. The problem with, or how they messed that up in Blacklist, was they carried over the oversimplified aspect of that mechanic from Conviction, right? In Conviction, as long as you were in a dark area, that's all that mattered. It didn't matter how brightly lit or how dark that shadowy area is. As long as you were in it, you're completely invisible to enemies as long as they didn't shine a flashlight at you. And that was an issue because when it comes to stealth games in general, you shouldn't force the player to be in a situation where either they're detected or they're not. There's supposed to be a middle gray area where the enemies are suspicious of the player's presence, and they'll go investigating the area, you know, bringing out their flashlights, torches, whatever, looking around, being more jumpy at noises and other stuff like that, right? In Conviction and onwards, especially Blacklist 2, there was no such thing as a suspicious level of alertness from the enemies. There's just either you were completely undetected and they're completely calm, or you were detected and they would just pull out their guns and start shooting at you. There's no middle ground at all. You want to build up that suspense in any stealth action game for that matter, but especially in Splinter Cell. It makes it all the more satisfying to take down an enemy or outsmart them. It's like a cat and mouse kind of game. Gameplay, I should say. I'm gonna make it one solid value, like the this area here, and then go over it again with the darker one here. Go. Now pick the other one. Oops. I mean, there's not really anything else that I would expect from them. Just keep everything else pretty much the same, just, you know, making it look, sound nice. That's it. And there's one more thing that I got on my mind, and then I'll just stop talking about this, but are they gonna do that mess, that kind of business practice that a lot of AAA developers do nowadays, where they won't finish the game, but they'll still release it anyways in a half-finished state, and then just patch it as time goes on, and hope that the fan base and the public will just forget about the original release. I hope they don't do that. It just wouldn't make any sense anyways, because if it's a single player game that's a remake, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I'd be willing to wait a few months extra for them to work out all the bugs and glitches and all that before it gets released, so that, you know, I can actually enjoy the game during my first playthrough of it, of the remake anyways. I mean, what, it's been 20 years now at this point, since it's the first of 2022, first day of 2022, and the game was released in 2002. It's been 20 years since then. I think I can wait another few months. You know, this wouldn't make any sense to rush it out at that point, other than if a publisher tells them to, like Microsoft or something. But since Ubisoft is their own publisher, I don't see them having a reason to release a game that badly. I can fix that. There we go. And switch back. Yeah. And this can look a little muddy just because it does in the reference image. But yeah, I think that's all I gotta say about it for now. I do want to make a video about it, about the article specifically, and just saying all this stuff again, but going a little bit more into detail, as well as just doing some research as well, like who the original developers were of the original trilogy, the Ubisoft Montreal team, and whether or not we'll expect to see their work and the remake, stuff like that. We shall see. I think that's it. It's as much as it's gonna blend. Ooh, man, it's hot. I'm so sorry for complaining so much about it, but it's true. It wouldn't be so bad if it's, it's cold, like it's supposed to be in winter. But it's just been, the temperatures have been rising last few days, and it's been getting really humid to the point where there's a lot of fog during the morning, rain during the night, and what have you. Just none of it makes sense anymore as far as the weather goes, and quite frankly, I'm just kind of done trying to work around it. Okay, torso. Let me add the next layer. Put leg. Or let's put left leg. There we go. Fill this in and do the same here. This is going to be a little bit more difficult just because there's 3 major values here. Since his leg is cylindrical, of course, round. There's going to be a much more of a gradation. So far, I've been doing a pretty good job of working on this drawing while I'm talking. I'm not just sitting around talking the entire time like last stream. Oh man, that was embarrassing. But anyways. Let's think. Yeah, I mean, if they do decide to remake if they do decide to remake Pandora tomorrow and Chaos Theory, then does that mean they're going to remake Double Agent as well? Eviction, Blacklist, or are they just going to, essentially pretend like those games don't exist and just make new titles? Make Double Agent and Onwards non-canon. I don't know if anybody would be opposed to that, considering how not very well liked those games are. Again, they're not terrible games, but they're not what the franchise needed at the time. Okay. Next one. That's going to be the other half, or 2/3, let's put it that way. It goes down like that. Okay. And finally, bring in highlight. And weirdly enough, these 3 values have sharp lines separating them. Well, especially the highlight and the midtone. Yeah, it's supposed to be really bright. Let's see, what's the size I need for it? Let's try 20. Yeah, that'll do it. 20. Supposed to be just a light. Then line goes down. little bit thicker. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, exactly like that, in fact. Maybe a little bit thicker. Let me double the size of this. Try again. It said double, not... I don't know what factor this is. This bug, man, I tell you. Bugging me. That's why. What's worse is that even if I use my mouse to move the cursor out of the way, it still doesn't. As soon as I try moving my tablet pen. There we go. Makes you wonder if Square Enix is ever going to decide to do a remake of the original Deus Ex. I mean, they rebooted the Hitman series, so I want to put it past them. Come on. That'll do it, because I'm going to need the extra value here, or the extra space to blend these two anyways. Eight minutes left of this stream, but that's alright. Making pretty good progress. The stream's not ending, by the way. Close, but not quite. There we go. And that should do it. Alright, just his other two dreadlocks, and that's it. That's the only other thing I have to add to it. Then I'll be done with the Grisaille layer for the most part. Just go back and clean stuff up and fill everything in, and that's it. It'll be completely ready for coloring. In fact, I can just get this one done right now. So let's go back to this one, insert, we'll put small. I hope I didn't just talk a bunch without... I hope I didn't mute myself while I was talking earlier. That's alright. Basically, in case if I did mute myself without realizing it, I was talking about the announcement from Ubisoft Toronto that they're remaking the original Splinter Cell game. Gave my thoughts on it a bit, but I'll make a separate video if I want to, get around to doing it anyways. Expanding my thoughts further, my opinions and so on, concerns, and wishes. And that's about it. A lot of layers. But to be fair, a lot of digital artists that I check out sometimes on YouTube when they're showing off their time lapses or their tutorials, they'll usually have around this many layers anyways. So it's not completely uncommon to see this many layers at once. Okay, so go here, small dreadlock, fill it in, go, yeah, that's about right. Select the other one. We'll fill it in with the same value as well, but then I'll add this highlight here. And I should honestly make it a separate layer. So let's do that. Insert, output. Okay. So fill that in. Over here. Nah, it's not supposed to be completely white. Let's do this value. And then the mid-tone, just going between. So let's do that, just dead center. Then we'll do like a triangle. There we go. Something like that, and then blend the two together. I mean, the three together. Oh no, that's the 1 hour mark. Let me count the size of this and start over. There we go. go. Okay. And I am just about done. This. Cool. Yep. Looks about right to me. So that should be the last of the Grisaille layer I have to do. All that's left is to do the background, but that could be any value I want. In that case, I'll probably do the background. Mid-gray. So let's do that. Oops. Let's click on that. There we go. And then fill it in. There we go. I can still see everything. All the values, the contour lines, and everything. Cool. And if I wanted to be really pretentious about it, I'd like use this brush and make a bunch of texture brush strokes here and there. But I'm not about to do all that. Okay. There's the, yeah. There's that. So, not bad. Let me just save it again. And if I don't like the way the background looks, I can always just change it later. It's not a big deal. But that seems to be it. Let me go ahead and put that on and change this. Okay. So the stream is ending for real this time. Thankfully, it seems like I've got pretty much the rest of the Grisaille layer done, so I can move on to coloring this next stream. Hold on. Something that I don't do that what other digital artists recommend people do with digital drawing is flip the canvas over vertically or horizontally or whatever. So basically do this. And just to compare the drawing on the opposite side of the axis. But I don't see any real value when it comes to this, just because, for the contour anyways, because when it comes to the contour of the drawing, I'm tracing over the reference image anyways. So it makes it kind of pointless to look back at this when, if I'm using this, right, tracing over this, this should be just as accurate to this, even if I flip it. So, and for the most part, it does look accurate. Anyways, yeah, that's gonna be it for this stream. As I said, I don't think I'll do another stream on New Year's Day. Even though technically it's New Year's Day right now. And I'm technically doing a stream on New Year's Day. Nevertheless, though, I don't think I'll be doing a gaming stream. I just couldn't think of a game that could complete within a single day that will be interesting. For me anyways, to play through entire day for, because especially the Chaos Theory stream, that took about 6 hours to complete, and I had to say this, but I don't want to spend 6 hours on New Year's Day, you know, streaming, when I could be going to the bar and getting so drunk that I can't stand up correctly. So don't get me wrong, I would love to do more gaming streams, and I will do more gaming streams in the future, but I won't be able to do them consistently until I get these other projects done. But that being said, though, this drawing is almost complete, and there's not many more left I have to do. So if I can get them done as quickly as I'm doing this one, hey, I mean, that's even better. But anyways, as I said, that's the end of the stream, so I'm not gonna take any more time, especially when I want to turn the fans back on. So I'll finish this up in the next stream or two, and go from there. So yeah, until next time, peace.